Barry Gibb was born on September 1, 1946, in Douglas on the Isle of Man, the second of 5 children in a family where music was more instinct than ambition. From an early age, Barry displayed a rare sensitivity to melody and emotion, able to shape feelings into songs long before he fully understood them. Alongside his brothers, particularly twins Robin and Maurice, music became both a refuge and a shared language. When the family relocated to Australia in the late 1950s, the brothers began performing wherever they could, refining harmonies that would one day become legendary. Barry naturally emerged as the group's creative center, not through force, but through intuition. His songwriting carried an emotional weight that felt older than his years. Even then, there was a sense that Barry wasn't just writing songs to entertain, but to understand the world, connection, longing, and the quiet ache beneath joy. Finding a voice and returning to England. The Gibb family's return to England in the early 1960s marked a turning point that transformed promise into reality. In London, Barry and his brothers found themselves immersed in a competitive but creatively fertile music scene. Songs like New York Mining Disaster 1941, Massachusetts, and To Love Somebody introduced the Bee Gees to the world, showcasing Barry's gift for emotional storytelling. His voice, earnest and vulnerable, carried narratives of loss, hope, and human fragility that resonated across generations. Unlike many pop songs of the era, Barry's writing invited listeners inward rather than outward. Success came quickly, but Barry remained deeply focused on the craft rather than the applause. He understood instinctively that longevity in music depended on honesty. Those early hits were not just chart successes. They were declarations of identity, establishing Barry Gibb as a songwriter who could turn personal feeling into universal experience with remarkable clarity and restraint. Reinvention and the sound that defined an era. The 1970s demanded reinvention, and Barry Gibb rose to the challenge with fearless creativity. As musical tastes shifted, he leaned into a falsetto that would become one of the most recognizable sounds in popular music. Songs like Stayin' Alive, Night Fever, and How Deep Is Your Love didn't merely define the disco era, they elevated it. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack became a cultural phenomenon, cementing the Bee Gees as icons rather than trends. Barry's songwriting during this period balanced rhythm with vulnerability, proving that dance music could still carry emotional depth. Behind the glitter and global success was an artist relentlessly refining his voice and vision. He never treated reinvention as betrayal of the past, but as survival through sincerity. That ability to evolve without losing emotional truth became one of Barry Gibb's greatest strengths and ensured his place in music history. Loss, endurance, and a solo path forward. As the decades passed, Barry Gibb's life became marked not only by success, but by profound loss. The deaths of his brothers Maurice and Robin left him as the last surviving Bee Gee, carrying both legacy and grief. Yet Barry continued, honoring their memory through music rather than retreating from it. His later work reflected introspection, tenderness, and resilience, revealing an artist shaped by time rather than diminished by it. Collaborations with other legends and personal projects allowed him to explore quieter emotional spaces. Songs written during this period carried the weight of remembrance and gratitude, often centered on family, history, and endurance. Barry never chased relevance. He allowed it to find him through authenticity. His knighthood in 2018 recognized not just commercial achievement, but a lifetime of contribution to music and charity. By his late 70s, Barry stood as a symbol of perseverance, guided by heart, love, family, and the anchor of stability. Behind Barry Gibb's public life stood a deeply rooted private one, anchored by his enduring marriage to Linda Gray. After an early marriage that ended under the strain of youth and rising fame, Barry found lasting partnership with Linda in 1970. Their union became a foundation of stability amid the chaos of global stardom. Together, they raised 5 children, encouraging individuality rather than expectation. Barry often spoke of family as his true grounding force, crediting Linda's strength and understanding for helping him navigate both success and sorrow. Even at the height of fame, he emphasized presence over prestige. His role as a father mattered as deeply as his role as a songwriter. That balance allowed Barry to endure losses without losing himself. Family provided continuity when the music industry shifted and personal tragedy struck, reminding him that love, not legacy, was the true measure of a life well lived. Discovering Roy Orbison. Through song long before Barry Gibb met Roy Orbison, he knew him through sound. As a young songwriter, Barry was profoundly affected by Orbison's voice, its aching clarity, its fearless vulnerability. Songs like Crying, Only the Lonely, and In Dreams revealed a depth of emotion that went far beyond conventional pop. For Barry, Orbison demonstrated that music could confront loneliness without flinching. It wasn't about polish or performance, it was about truth. Roy's voice carried heartbreak without apology, and that honesty left a lasting imprint on Barry's own approach to songwriting. He has often said that Orbison's music felt almost spiritual, as if it came from somewhere beyond technique. Those songs taught Barry that restraint could be powerful and that emotional risk was essential. In many ways, Roy Orbison helped define the emotional courage Barry would later bring to his own work. Meeting the man behind the voice. When Barry Gibb finally met Roy Orbison, the experience surprised him. Offstage, Roy was quiet, gentle, and unassuming, far removed from the towering presence he became behind a microphone. Barry recalled being struck by that contrast, the humility of the man versus the magnitude of the artist. Roy did not command attention in conversation, but when he sang, everything changed. That transformation fascinated Barry. There was no ego, no need to explain his greatness. Roy allowed the music to speak, and it always did. In an industry often fueled by self-promotion, Orbison's restraint felt almost radical. Barry admired that deeply, seeing in Roy a model of integrity. Their encounters, though not constant, left a strong impression. Roy represented a kind of purity and artistry that Barry aspired to, a reminder that lasting impact comes from sincerity, not spectacle. Respect, resilience, and a shared journey. Barry Gibb also recognized something familiar in Roy Orbison's career journey. Both artists experienced towering success, followed by periods of uncertainty. Roy's resurgence in the late 1980s, particularly through the Traveling Wilburys, felt deeply affirming to Barry. Watching Orbison find new audiences later in life reinforced the belief that true artistry never expires. Roy's voice, unchanged by time, reminded Barry that emotional honesty remains relevant across generations. When Roy passed away suddenly in 1988, the loss felt personal. Barry described it as losing not just a legend, but a guiding presence. Yet Roy's legacy endured, woven into the fabric of modern music. For Barry, Orbison's life was proof that even after hardship and loss, art could rise again. That lesson became increasingly meaningful as Barry faced his own personal losses in later years. The standard of truth in music. As Barry Gibb reflected on his long career, Roy Orbison remained a quiet benchmark in his creative conscience. Barry has said that whenever he enters a studio, he still thinks about honesty, about whether the music feels real. That standard, he believes, came in part from Roy. Orbison never disguised emotion or softened pain for comfort. His songs stood naked and sincere, and that bravery left a permanent mark. Barry did not seek to imitate Roy's style, but he carried forward the principle behind it. Music, in Barry's view, should reveal rather than impress. That belief shaped decades of songwriting across genres, from pop to disco to ballads. Roy Orbison represented the kind of artist who didn't chase relevance, yet remained timeless. For Barry, that is the highest achievement any musician can hope for, to remain truthful even as the world changes around you. A final tribute, spoken with age and gratitude. At 79, Barry Gibb speaks of Roy Orbison not with nostalgia alone, but with gratitude shaped by experience. He sees Roy as more than a voice or a legend. He sees him as an embodiment of emotional truth. Barry believes the world still feels Roy's absence because his music spoke to something essential in people. Looking back, Barry understands that admiration is not about comparison, but inspiration. Roy showed him that vulnerability could be strength, and that silence could be as powerful as sound. In honoring Roy Orbison, Barry also acknowledges the values that sustained his own journey: honesty, humility, and emotional courage. His words are not a revelation meant to surprise, but a truth long held and finally spoken aloud. Two legacies, different voices, united by sincerity. One sang pain into beauty, the other carried that lesson forward, ensuring it was never forgotten.